my name's Esther. I'm from UCAT, the University Clinical Aptitude Test, and I'll be talking to you about the UCAT for 2023. At the moment, we've just come to the end of our 2022 test cycle, so we don't have details pinned down for next year's test cycle yet in terms of any changes to exact dates or fees. But what I'll do is talk to you about how the process is run, give you an example of the dates from this year, and then you should have a good idea of what to expect for next year. Just going to share my screen and we'll begin the presentation, which should take about 20 to 25 minutes. Okay. So the UCAT is an admissions test. It's one of two admissions tests. They are mandatory. You can't avoid sitting them. One is the UCAT and one is the BMAT. And which admissions test you choose to sit is really down to which universities you want to apply to. It is possible to sit both admissions tests in a year. They are at different points in the year. So you can do that depending on how you want to spread your UCAS applications. The UCAT is very different to the other admissions tests in that we assess a range of mental abilities and skills rather than curriculum content. So it's skills that are identified by our university medical and dental schools as being important. You'll sit the test in the same year that you apply through UCAS. You can only sit the test once each year, so you do have to be prepared. And it's a 2-hour multiple choice computer-based test. You don't sit the test at your school, you would sit it at your nearest Pearson VUE test centre. Here's a list of the universities which require the UCAT at the moment. So there's 34 on that list. So if you are applying to medicine or dentistry at any one of these universities, you would need to sit the UCAT. This list is also available on our website, as is everything I'm covering in this presentation. So these are the key dates for 2022. I wouldn't anticipate these to change hugely across 2023, but we will publish next year's date early in the new year, usually January or February time. We can confirm the exact details for the 2023 test cycle. So around the end of May, we normally open registration, and from that point you can go and create your UCAT account. It means you're registered with us and you've got a candidate ID number. If you want to apply for bursaries or access arrangements, which I'll talk about in a second, you can do that from this point, so you can be organised. It's good to get these things done while you're still in year 12, before the year 12 academic year ends, as you might need some evidence from your school. We then usually open booking mid to late June. You can then go on and see where the available test slots are, where your nearest test centre is, and book a test. Then we test through quite a long test window from the 11th of July this year to the 29th of September, and it will be something similar next year. So you have quite a long period where you can choose when you want to sit the test. So that's different to other admissions tests. I would advise it if you're looking for my advice on when is best to sit the test. August really is kind of the best time. You'll have finished year 12. You won't yet have gone back into year 13. It'll be before you need to start worrying about your UCAS application. So I would say August is the ideal time to sit the test. You will have your UCAT score then at the time of testing. You get your score on the day of your test. That means you'll have that information before you need to submit your UCAS application on the 15th of October. Again, these are subject to change to 2023, but the fee this year for UK candidates was £70. We do offer bursaries to candidates in financial need. If you think this might apply to you, please have a look at the bursary scheme page of our website. You can find the full eligibility criteria on there. And again, we open applications from the end of May, so you've got quite a long time to apply for a bursary voucher before you need to book your test. The same for access arrangements. If you currently receive extra time or rest breaks or any other accommodations or any other needs for public exams at school or college, we can usually mirror most of these in the UCAT. What you need to do is submit an online application for access arrangements, upload the evidence. That would usually be a letter from your school or college that confirms what exam arrangements you're getting at the moment, but we do accept some other forms of evidence. But again, I would encourage you to do that sort of May, June time before schools close for the summer. Otherwise, you might be struggling to get your evidence over the summer holidays. Again, you need that authorisation in place before you then go ahead and book the correct version of the tests. So if you think that applies to you, please have a look at the access arrangements page of the website. Moving on to look at the test itself. The UCAT consists of 5 separately timed subtests. There are 4 cognitive subtests and a 5th subtest of situational judgment, and we'll look at each one in turn now. The timings for the tests, each of the subtests are given here. Again, this may change slightly from 2023, but this is this year's test timings. So in total, and there's a 1 minute rest break or introduction section before each subtest. That takes the standard test to 2 hours. They are individually timed, so if you're quicker on one subtest, it doesn't mean you then get more time in the next subtest. So the first one is verbal reasoning. Here you have 21 minutes to answer 44 questions. You'll be presented with 11 passages of text and there'll be 4 questions associated with each passage. This subtest is looking at your ability to be able to assimilate a large quantity of information, look at the information presented in front of you, don't make inferences, use only the information from the passage, and it's looking at how you can reach the correct conclusion quite quickly. I feel like I've not explained that very well. So it's looking at basically at your critical reasoning skills. So making inferences, drawing conclusions. You should only use the information presented in the passage. The topics can be on any subject at all. You don't need to know anything about the subjects. And if you do, you should kind of disregard that and only use the information in the passage. We'll have a quick look at a verbal reasoning question here. You don't need to read through this, but it just gives you an idea of this is what the live test looks like. So the passage of text is there, and then there's a question on the right-hand side. So then you would, once you've answered this question, you would have 3 more questions associated with the same passage. As you can see, it is multiple choice, and there is only 1 correct answer for each of these questions. It is quite time pressured, this subtest, so you need to pace yourself and move through it quickly. If you can't find the answer, move on. The second subtest is decision making. You have 31 minutes to answer 29 questions, so around a minute per question. And there's quite a variety of different questions within this subtest. So you might see things like logical puzzles or syllogisms or Venn diagrams. And it's looking at your ability to apply logic to reach a decision or conclusion. Unlike the verbal reasoning, all questions in this subtest are standalone. They don't share data across questions. You don't need any mathematical or logical reason terminology. You are given a whiteboard and a marker pen at the test centre, so make sure you're given that when you arrive, and you can use that to jot down notes. You might find that quite useful in this section and the quantitative reasoning subtest as well. So if we have a look at an example decision-making question, this is what we call a sort of drag and drop style question. So in this question type, you're presented with a statement and then asked to say yes or no if the following conclusions follow or not. So does it logically follow or not? You drag the answer across. Obviously, in this type of question, you could get it partially correct. Some you may have got right, some you may have got wrong. In these question types and in some other question types, you can pick up partial marks in this subtest. So it's always worth having a go if you're unsure. The third subtest is quantitative reasoning. 25 minutes to answer 36 questions. This is looking, I say there's no curriculum content. This is one that sort of includes math skills, but they're not of too high a level. We say sort of equivalent with a GCSE grade C. So things like ratios, percentages, averages and fractions. If you're not studying maths at the moment at A level, that's fine, but sort of brush up on those from your GCSE maths. But it's less to do with testing your math skills and more about your ability to use your numerical skills to solve problems. Again, you've got your marker board and your whiteboard and marker pen to use, so you can jot down things, and you are provided with a basic calculator. You can't take your own calculator into the exam. You have to use the inbuilt one that's built in the test. It's not a scientific calculator because the level of maths in this subtest is not that high, so it is a basic calculator. But using a combination of the calculator and your mental maths, where it's simpler, is probably the quickest way to move through this subtest. So I would get used to practicing using the online calculator while you're doing your preparation, your revision. It makes you quicker, you get used to using it, and then you'll be quicker in the live test. And here's an example quantitative reasoning question. So you might be presented with a table, as in this case, or it could be a chart or a graph or a large passage of text with some numerical data in it. And then again, it's a multiple choice question. And for this subtest, obviously, there is only one correct answer. There's no partial marking. It's either correct or incorrect. Okay. If we move on and look at the fourth subtest, which is abstract reasoning, this is the last of the cognitive subtests. Again, like the verbal reasoning, this one is quite time pressured, so you need to really practice your timing when you're revising for this. And again, if you're not understanding questions, if you're struggling on one, you can flag them and move on. So don't get bogged down with one question. Try to move through them fairly swiftly and be strict with yourself. So you have just 12 minutes to work through 50 questions. This is looking at your ability to identify patterns among abstract shapes where there might be irrelevant or distracting material. So it's looking at you to sort of change track, test hypotheses, discard irrelevant information and reach the right conclusion. And it might be quite different to anything you've done at school before. So this subtest can throw people initially when they start to revise it. There are 4 different question types in this subtest, but they're all associated with different sets of shapes. So if we have a look at one, this is one of the question types. So in this question type, you're presented with 2 sets of shapes, set A and set B. You need to work out what links all the 6 boxes within set A. So what is the common rule or pattern that links every box in set A? And then what is the common link or pattern or rule that links all the boxes in set B? Then you're given a test shape and you'll be saying, does this test shape belong to set A, set B, or neither? And you might get 2 or 3 questions associated with the same set of shapes. So once you've worked out what the rule is, although it might take you longer on the first question, you'll be a lot quicker on the next 2 or 3 questions as you're answering them because you'll have already worked out what that rule is. Other question types might present you with a series of shapes, and then you're given some options and asked to say which is the next shape in this series. So there's a few different question types. Again, my best advice on this subtest is lots of practice questions. The more you do, the more you will start to get used to spotting these patterns and the quicker you will get. So practice really is key on this subtest. Okay, the final 5th subtest is situational judgment. This is different to the other 4 cognitive ones. It's looking more about your ability to understand real-world situations and critical factors. We're trying to assess things here that aren't assessed in your academic grades and things that are really important if you want to be successful in a clinical career. Things like integrity, perspective taking, team involvement, resilience, and adaptability. Some of the questions may be set in a medical setting like a hospital or a GP surgery. Some might be set at university or other places, but you don't need any medical or procedural knowledge to be able to answer the questions. You might hear these called SJTs, so situational judgment tests, or SJTs are used quite widely in medical selection and in other recruitment fields as well. So this is unlikely to be the last time you'll see this type of subtest. And here's an example of a situational judgment question. So the scenario is here on the left, and you're asked in this question type how important something is for a person in that subtest to take into account. And in this question type, you're given 4 response options, and you can choose between them. In other question types, you might be asked how appropriate a certain course of action is. So some questions are important, some are appropriateness. This question type has 4 response options, as I've said. If you were close to the correct answer, so if the correct answer was very important and you'd selected important, you can still pick up some partial marks. So there is some partial scoring for being close to the correct answer in the situational judgment test. Other question types, you might only have 2 response options. So is it appropriate or inappropriate, or important or not important? Obviously, in those question types, there isn't partial marking. You're either correct or incorrect. Other question types, you might be given several response options and asked to rank them in terms of appropriateness, which is the most appropriate and which is the least appropriate course of action to take. So there's a few different question types. If you're struggling on this subtest, we do recommend you have a read of the GMC guidelines. That's the General Medical Council's guidelines on good medical practice. You can just Google them and find them online, and they go through kind of the expectations of doctors and people working in medicine in the NHS in this country. So that's quite useful to read if you are struggling with this subtest. It can help put things in perspective. Okay, so in terms of preparation, although it's a test of aptitude rather than curriculum content, you still do need to revise for this test. It's really important. It can be the difference between being selected for interview or not. So please allow yourself plenty of time to prepare. We say kind of 4 to 6 weeks before your test date, start having a look at some example questions. High scoring candidates sort of indicated 25 to 30 hours of revision, I would say at least, of doing example questions and practice tests. We provide lots of free resources on the UCAT website, and that is what we recommend that you use to do your revision. There are lots of commercial companies out there who offer coaching in the UCAT and in the BMAT, and basically we always get asked what we would recommend, and the short answer is we don't recommend any of these. Some of them may be very good, that's not to say they're not, but we have no affiliation with them. We have no control over the kind of the standards of questions they are putting, whether it reflects the current year's test content, and whether their anticipated scoring is very accurate and mirrors our own. So I would advise you to use them with caution. Start with the official practice materials on the UCAT website, and then you can go from there if you find you've used all the resources and you still want more help or more practice questions. In terms of what we provide on the website, there's a handy preparation plan. That's a video and a PDF you can download and print off, and that gives you kind of a suggested timescale for revision or what resources to use and in what order. So that can help just get you started. There's a tour tutorial which runs through the sort of the mechanics of the computer-based test. So it tells you how to navigate through the test, how to choose a question, go back, how to operate the calculator. There's a flag and review tool built within the test, which is really useful. So if you're struggling with a question and you're not sure of the answer, you can pop an answer down, flag it, and then if you've got a couple of minutes left at the end of each subtest, you can go into the review screen and look at those ones that you flagged and maybe go back and change your answer or look at them again if you have time. So getting familiar with the flag and review tool is quite useful, but that's all covered in the tour tutorial. The question tutorials are on there. So there's a question tutorial for each of the 5 subtests. And these are really useful because they run through every single question type you will see in each subtest and help provide you with strategies and tips for how to answer them. So again, if you're struggling with any subtest, I would really recommend you have a look at the question tutorials first. We then have some extensive question banks. So I think we've got nearly 1,000 practice questions within those question banks. So have a look at those next. And then come on to the practice tests. So at the moment for 2022, I'm not sure whether it will change for 2023, but we provide 4 fully timed practice tests. I wouldn't jump straight in and use one of these. I would start with the tutorials, then the question banks. Then once you're familiar with the questions, use the practice test to kind of work out where you need to speed up. Which subtest are you not getting through all the questions on? So really use those to try and work on your technique and your speed in working through the practice tests. So there are 4 that you can practice on. The test tools page of the website also talks to you about the things that you'll find at the test centre to help you. So the marker board and pen, the online calculator and things like that. There's also lots of advice from past candidates who've sat the test, and you can look at that and hear what they have to say as well. Okay. So final tips and advice. I think I've probably covered most of these already, but it is a multiple choice test. There is no negative marking, so you don't lose marks for an incorrect answer. So I would try not to leave any questions unanswered, try not to leave any blanks. If you're struggling, just put your best guess, flag the question to come back to you later if you have time, and move on. Practice tests, I've already said, don't dive straight in and use those at the start. I would wait until you've done quite a few weeks revision and then try using maybe 1 practice test a week on the run up to your test date. Some important things to remember, and again, at the time you're watching this, this will be a long, long way away, but there is a test day page of our website that I really recommend all candidates go on and read. It is pretty essential information on there. So it talks to you about what to expect when you arrive at the test centre, the check-in process, which is different to any exams you will have at school, what you are and aren't allowed to take into the test room. Pearson VUE are very strict on the correct ID, so you've got plenty of time now. You know, we have about 400 candidates turn up every year and get turned away because they've not got the correct ID with them, or it's out of date, or it's unsigned or something. So please have a look at those pages. You'll be asked to sign some examination rules before you enter the test room. It's not like a school exam, so it's not like a school hall. They're usually quite small, the test rooms. They accommodate usually between 5 and 15 candidates at any one time. Not everybody will be sitting the UCAT. They might be sitting other tests like a driving theory test or a contractor safety license. So people will be coming and going and being sat down very quietly by the invigilator while you are sitting your test. You can ask for earplugs or headphones if you think you find that distracting, but just please be aware it's not like a school exam, so you need to make sure you're prepared for that. So final thing, scoring and results. There's two parts or two elements to your UCAT score. For each of the 4 cognitive subtests, you receive a score between 300 and 900. So that gives you your total score of 1,200 to 3,600. You then get a banding for situational judgment. So band 1 is the highest, band 4 is the lowest, and that's the 2 aspects of your score. You'll be given a copy of your score report on the day of your test, so as you leave the test centre, you will know instantly how well you've performed, which I think is very useful. And again, you will have that information before you submit your UCAT application. That's quite important because like with the BMAT, all our universities use the admissions tests in different ways. For some, it might be quite a significant factor. They might apply quite a heavy weighting to the UCAT score when they're looking at your academic grades and your personal statement. So that might determine quite strongly whether you're invited for interview or not. For others, it might be scored a lot lower and be more of a smaller part of that decision. Some universities apply a threshold, so they won't consider your application unless you meet a certain threshold. I think there's only a few that are like that. More have what we would call a cut-off. So if you are in the bottom, say 30% of candidates, then they wouldn't look at your application. Some use a situational judgment score to kind of whittle down the number of applicants and decide on interviews. So some may not offer interviews to candidates who've got the lowest situational judgment banding. So if you're a band 4, you wouldn't be invited to interview. Others don't use the situational judgment test at all, but it's really important to understand that. So have a look at the entry requirements pages of the universities you're thinking to applying to. We also have a how universities use your UCAT score page of our website as well, so you can look on there, and that will give you a lot more information. But it means that you can use that when you're deciding to submit your applications. If your score's not good enough for one university, you shouldn't waste an application because you won't be invited to interview. But it might be perfectly well good for another university. So because one door is closed, others might still be open. So make sure you do your research on that once you've sat your test. Okay. And I think we're just about there. So that's everything I've got to tell you about the UCAT. Apologies that the information is for 2022, but we are just wrapping up our last test cycle. Information on the 2023 test cycle will be available sort of early part of next year. So if you have a look again in February, March time, that's probably a good time to have a look and really start thinking about it seriously around May time when we open registration. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.